of Derek Chauvin. I got the call earlier this week that I would be in the courtroom taking notes, not just for you guys, but for local media, national media, and international media. And so there's a lot of pressure on me today, but you guys, I'm proud. I'm proud to be on the right side of history. So before we switch over to coverage of inside the courtroom, I wanted to let you know what you can expect from today's hearing. Today, we know that Judge Cahill is going to consider five aggregating factors when he sentences Derek Chauvin. He's going to consider the fact that children were present during this crime. He's going to consider the fact that Derek Chauvin had accomplices. And he's also going to consider the duration in which excessive force was used. On top of that, Attorney General Keith Ellison opened up a link on his website for the community to submit victim impact statements. Within, I think, about an hour, that site crashed because there was such an outpouring of response. More than 1,000 submissions were made, and those will be delivered to the judge to consider in the sentencing as well. Now, many people asking, will we hear from Chauvin today? That's the big question. He does have the legal right to speak today, and usually defendants will use today their right to express any remorse. And oftentimes that can help reduce their sentencing. But legal analysis said that it's very unlikely we'll hear from Chauvin. So we'll have to see on that one there. Now, before I head into the courtroom, just want to give you the heads up that there are rallies planned today around 4 or 5 Central Time that I'll be covering as well. And then there's an evening protest at 9 p.m. that I'll bring to you guys live as well. But for now, I'm going to head into the courtroom, and I hope you guys stick around as we switch over to live coverage inside the courtroom here in just a moment.
What's up, everyone? Welcome back to the Leon Block. I do have some awesome, amazing announcements coming soon later on in this podcast. But for now, we are faced with the sentencing of Derek Chauvin, and Georgia
Prosecutors who
Fort is live right now
for the murder of George Floyd.
Always had this kind of overarching concern that we could lose because we're trying to convict a police officer.
Blackwell says that's not the only reason he had doubt. Was it Harper?
I'm especially proud of Georgia Fort, who is an independent journalist in the Minneapolis area who's doing really great coverage, and she is actually one of the few journalists that has been stepping up to the system and exposing the hypocritical ways that they're showcasing white people, let's say white terrorists, versus Black victims of police brutality and police violence. So she's doing a great job of highlighting the propaganda that the mainstream media puts out, and it's admirable, and it's an honor to see her getting this kind of coverage, her being the one to share this information and put it forth. So I'm especially excited for her to be one of only two people to cover this moment. This is history right here.
As we're currently involved in the Dante Wright case, and
If you are asked to be, would you help prosecute that case?
I don't know. I would have to wait and to hear. Obviously, I took on, was involved in the Chauvin trial on a pro bono basis, and I would presume that would be the basis that I might, if involved in Dante Wright, it would be the same. And you kind of reach a point where you pro bono to the point you're out of business. So I've got to stay in business before I can do pro bono for the public good. I need to first do what I need to for my own good.
I get what he's saying, but this is the thing that I have an issue with. There's so many victims of police violence, particularly in the Minneapolis, Twin Cities area. So the fuck what? Like, fuck the money part. We need help. We need justice. Like, I don't know. I That's a different topic. I actually wanted to talk about uh what the charges actually were, because uh so it was April 20th. Derek Chauvin was found guilty. I forgot it was April 20th of second degree murder, third degree murder, and second degree manslaughter in the murder of George Floyd. And so we're about to hear the sentencing. Judge Cahill found four aggravating factors, which allows for an upward departure from sentencing guidelines. Four aggravating factors found: Chauvin treated Floyd with particular cruelty. Chauvin abused his position of trust and authority. Children were present, and Chauvin committed the crime as a group with active participation of at least three other people. Prosecution is seeking a sentence of 30 years. Defense is seeking a downward departure from sentencing guidelines or a sentence of probation with time served. Derek Chauvin will be given the opportunity to address the court prior to the ruling, but it is unknown if he intends to speak. We will see.
What kind of games do you want to play with them? Yeah. Would you?
So that's George Floyd's daughter, young daughter, is talking about how she wants to beat Derek Chauvin up because she misses doing the fun things with her father. Derek Chauvin is sitting here. They're at the trial right now at the sentencing, and Derek Chauvin sitting here, shaved his head, and he's got a mask on. But you can see his face a little broken up listening.
Thank you, Deanna. I really appreciate you answering questions today.
From the nephew about George Floyd, Brandon Williams.
I wish I could show you this myself.
In this country,
However, I did in the description post the link to this link of Georgia Ford's live coverage of the Chauvin sentencing, so you can go ahead and watch along with me if you'd like.
On Monday, May 25th, 2020, George Perry Floyd Jr. was murdered by Derek Chauvin in a malicious and insidious display of hate and abuse of power. Chauvin killed George. Not only did he kill George, but he also displayed a total lack of consideration for human life as he did so. You saw it, I saw it, and millions of people across the country and the globe witnessed the act of hate. A year and 1 month later, I stand here before you tasked with the duty of expressing how George's death has impacted me personally and the rest of our family. As I racked my brain and thought about what I could say today, I came to this conclusion. It is humanly impossible for me to stand here and convey or articulate the right words that would capture all that we are feeling and what we have felt over this period. So please bear with me as I attempt to impossible. The sudden murder of George has forever traumatized us. You may see us cry, but the full extent of our pain and trauma will never be seen with the naked eye. The heartbreak and hurt goes far beyond any number of tears we could ever cry. Words simply cannot express the pain, anguish, and suffering that our family and friends have endured since George's murder. It has been truly unimaginable, but not as nearly unimaginable as the defendant's decision to take the life of a human being with no regard for the effect it may have on others. Although Chauvin will be sentenced today and spend time in prison, he will have the luxury of seeing his family again, talking to them, and he will likely get to spend time with them upon his release. These are all luxuries that my young cousin Gianna was robbed of when Chauvin made the active decision to kill her father. There will be no more birthday parties, no graduations, holiday gatherings, or other family celebrations. The laughter, hugs, guidance, advice, sense of security, and those opportunities to simply say I love you are forever gone. They say time heals all, and while I generally believe that saying, it's challenging to do so given these unfathomable circumstances. Before I conclude, I must highlight a few things. George's murder, this trial, and everything in between has been tragic and devastating. Our family is forever broken, and one thing we cannot get back is George Floyd. It is the request of my family that the maximum penalty for the crime for which the defendant was convicted be imposed. On behalf of my family, friends, community, and supporters, I wish to express my sincerest gratitude for allowing this opportunity of expression. Thank you.
Your Honor, just for the record, this wonderful lady standing here is a Hennepin County victim advocate.
Boswell is well known to the court.
Yes, thank you.
And so, Your Honor, we'll next hear from the brother of George Floyd, Mr. Terrence Floyd.
And Mr. Floyd, if you could state your full name, spelling each of your names.
Yes. Terrence Floyd is Terrence, Floyd, Floyd.
Go ahead.
I'm here representing my brother. I'm from New York. On May 25th, 2020, my brother was murdered, everyone knows, by Derek Chauvin. The facts of this case were proven beyond a reasonable doubt, and three guilty verdicts have been rendered. This situation has really affected me and my family. Any family member that has went through this, we are part of a fraternity of families, and it's not one of those fraternities that you enjoy. I just over this last year and months, I actually talked to a few people, and I wanted to know from the man himself why. What were you thinking?
Y'all see his face
What
right
was going
now?
through your head when you had your knee on my brother's neck? Why?
Mm,
Why? When you knew that
mm.
he posed no threat anymore, yeah, he was handcuffed. Why you didn't at least get up?
Right.
Why you stayed there? A month before my brother was murdered, I was on the phone with him, and we had a long conversation. And as I looked at the video of my niece. The last conversation me and my brother had was he wanted to have play dates. He wanted to plan play dates with Gianna and my daughter, and we started setting it up. That can't happen, and I have to. My daughter's still young, but I still have to explain to her because this is history. This is a case everybody knows about. So she's gonna find out, and I'm gonna have to explain that to her. And I think that's to me harder than even just standing here. That I have to talk to my daughter and tell her, about her niece, about her uncle, about the situation. That's basically reliving it all over again, years down the line. I'm here on behalf of my family, on behalf of me and my family, we seek the maximum penalty. We don't want to see no more slaps on the wrist.
Nope.
We've been through that already. In my community, in my culture, we've been through that already. Smacked on the wrist. No, 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 no. Because if it was us, if it was the roles was reversed, there wouldn't be no case. It would have been open and shut.
Yep.
We'd have been under the jail for murdering somebody. So we asked for that same penalty for Derek Chauvin. Thank you.
Thank you, sir.
Your Honor, the final victim impact statement for the state will come from George Floyd's brother, Philonise Floyd.
And sir, if you could begin by giving us your full name and spell each of your names, and I have permitted you to use your phone because you have notes on it, is that correct?
Yes, sir.
All right, and you may proceed when you're ready. Giving us your full name first.
Philonise Floyd, spelled Philonise, last name Floyd, Floyd.
And you may proceed.
One year ago, May 25th, my brother George was murdered by Derek Chauvin and his co-defendants in broad daylight with a knee to his neck for 9 minutes and 29 seconds. I was a trucker, and immediately my life changed forever. I began to speak to the world for George from the United Nations, Africa, Canada, Japan, and so many other countries. Every day, I have begged for justice to be served, reliving the execution of George, while others begged and pleaded for Officer Chauvin to simply just allow George to take a breath. I haven't had a real night's sleep because of the nightmares I constantly have hearing my brother beg and plead for his life over and over again. Even saying they're going to kill me. Please, officer. Screaming for our mom. I have had to sit through each day of Officer Derek Chauvin's trial and watch the video of George dying for hours over and over again. For an entire year, I had to relive George being tortured to death every hour of the day, only taking naps and not knowing what a good night's sleep is anymore. I've been lifting my voice tirelessly every day so that George's death will not be in vain. Honorable Judge Peter Cahill, I thank you for allowing me to share this today. George's life mattered. So my family and I, most of all, my niece, Gianna, she needs closure. I'm asking that you please find it suitable to give Officer Chauvin the maximum sentence possible, charge that he has been found guilty for.
Lock him up.
My family and I have been given a life sentence.
Yes.
We will never be able to get George back. Daddy's our daughter's first love. He would never be able to walk Gianna down the aisle at her wedding, attend those magical moments of her life like a daddy-daughter dance, sweet 16 party, seeing her out for prom graduations, and she would never be able to have any personal memories with her father. With a smirk on his face and children present, Officer Chauvin used excessive force and acted against his training. Chauvin had no regards for human life, George's life. I stand before you today asking you to please help us find closure by giving Chauvin the maximum sentence possible, making sure he does his time consecutively without the possibilities of parole, probation, or getting out early for good behavior. Thank you.
Thank you, sir.
That was powerful.
Mr. Crane.
Thank you, Your Honor. Here today, of course, for sentencing, gives us an opportunity to speak about other matters that I think are involved in sentencing and where we are in the criminal justice system in the processing of this case. As a member of an elected office, representing the people of the state of Minnesota, as well as people of the local community, I want to say a couple of things. And first of all, I want to really thank some of the police officers at the Minneapolis Police Department who, under great pressure, great stress, to some extent at peril to their occupations, what they've devoted their life to, stuck to their oath and their commitment as police officers to speak openly and honestly about policing and the training that is needed by police. Those officers didn't hide behind a blue wall. They came forward. They told this court and those jurors what they knew about training and responsibility. And I think they deserve recognition and credit for that. Would also like to thank members of the Bureau of Criminal Apprehension. Those agents get called in, great sacrifice to their personal lives. Whenever things happen, they go. They did that here, and under really extraordinary circumstances, completed a very professional and thorough investigation. Conducting interviews is hard enough, but conducting them in the atmosphere of the city following the murder of George Floyd is even more difficult. And they did so, I think, above and beyond the call of duty. And I want to thank them for doing that on behalf of the whole prosecution staff. I want to thank the family, the loved ones, the friends of George Floyd. They have been through so much more than families involved in murder cases. He's right. It's a fraternity you don't want to be part of. But they've been through so much more because of the pandemic and because of security, safety precautions that we've had to take. They have been through a lot. At a time when they try to grieve like everybody does for loss of someone, they are going through so much more. And I want to thank them, all of them, the family. Court saw testimony from Philonis Floyd, Courtney Ross. These are people who are trying to deal with their loss, but they have to do it in a very public way and under very trying circumstances through no fault of their own. So I thank them. They have all been models of grace and understanding, and really remarkable. I think I'll, I think, come back to them again in a little bit. Your Honor, we have submitted a sentencing brief. I would incorporate that. I guess I would incorporate my comments today into that memo. But I do think there are things that I want to bring out today in my arguments. For hundreds of years, the court had discretion in sentencing. It was the trial court's decision on what a sentence should be. The recognition that the trial court sat through the trial, watched the evidence, saw how it affected people, informed the court's discretion. When the legislature passed the guidelines, legitimate attempt to try and even out sentences, they defined certain presumptive sentences, as we all know, for typical crimes. For each crime, a typical crime. But they did not remove discretion for sentencing judges. They recognized that nobody is better suited to decide whether this is the typical case represented by that guidelines presumptive sentence, or if there are reasons why this is worse than that. And the guideline still gives this court discretion when there are aggravating factors to give a more serious sentence than what the guidelines
convicted for the murder of George Floyd.
As you know, we are asking you to do that today. As this court found, there are 4 aggravating factors that we have identified that go beyond a list of just what those factors are. We have not just done our homework and found a list. The court made good findings, detailed findings about those factors, and we think they justify a greatly increased sentence. This is not the typical second-degree unintentional murder. Supreme Court in our state has said that, and very recently, even one aggravating factor is sufficient to go twice the top of the range. Here we have 4. First one that the court found is an abusive position of trust and authority. And the court specifically found that when Mr. Chauvin was acting as a police officer, he had a position of trust and authority. That is certainly true. We trust police officers. We trust them when we need help. We call them for help. We trust that they're going to take care of the problems that they are assigned to deal with, right? We trust them. We also give them great authority. We give them great power. We give them power to use force that individuals would be prosecuted for using. Okay? We give them authority to arrest, to detain. And with great power, of course, comes great responsibility. So they're not sent out there by themselves to do this. They're given substantial training. This court saw all of that through the trial, in general and in specific, Mr. Chauvin and the other 3 officers. They're given training on the use of force, the proportional use of force. The force used has to be warranted by a threat. They're given training on de-escalation because we recognize that police officers are called in when people are not having their best day, when people might be affected by mental illness, drug abuse, any number of issues. They're just having a bad day, and they're trained for that. You should be. And they're taught how to use that to de-escalate and control a situation. They're taught medical intervention. They're taught to provide medical attention to people who need it. Being a police officer is a difficult job. We ask a lot of them. It's a profession, there's no doubt about it. But we give them a substantial amount of training. Most officers do it right. This case wasn't about police officers, all police officers. It wasn't about policing. This case was about their children disregarding all that training he received and assaulting Mr. Floyd until he suffocated to death. One of the things that you heard, Your Honor, and the jurors heard that can really encapsulate, I think, a very important issue here. 7 words: in your custody is in your care. And it's a real simple mantra, a real easy thing to remember. If you're going to take custody of somebody, you have to provide care. You have to do it in a caring way. You can't simply disregard their care. Mr. Chauvin abused his position of trust and authority as a police officer by doing just that, just disregarding all his training. There's an abuse of that because what did he decide to do? We often are forced in this criminal justice system to infer people's state of mind by their conduct and their statements. What was Derek Chauvin's end game here? What was the plan? It seems apparent the plan was hold him down until we can dump him in an ambulance and no longer have him be our problem. Recall he said to Charles McMillan, big guy, might be on something. That's it. He held Mr. Floyd down as Mr. Floyd begged for his life. He had the other officers help in that regard. And rather than doing a simple expedient of putting him on his side, he said, yeah, He was dismissive to that duty of care. We trust that arrestees will be treated with respect, reasonable force, and that their medical needs will be addressed. I'm paraphrasing from the court's findings. That trust was violated. We trust that they will use their authority reasonably. And this was a particularly egregious abuse of that force. Again, paraphrasing the court's findings. The typical second-degree murder does not involve that extent of abuse of a dearly held position of abuse, a position of authority and trust by the community, by individuals in the community. Your Honor found that Mr. Floyd was treated by Mr. Chauvin with particular cruelty. I think tortured is the right word.
Yep.
We know that we've all seen it. Mr. Floyd did not want to be in the back seat. That's it. And that's the rub. It was the need to get him in that back seat no matter what. And we all saw that once he was pulled out of that back seat, he calmed right down. He even willingly went down to the ground. I'm going down. So he went down to the ground, not fighting, not punching. And he was placed initially on his side. He's already handcuffed. He's placed on his side in a recovery position, like he should be, because he's trying to breathe. And then quickly placed prone on the ground, face down. Mr. Chauvin put his left knee on George Floyd's neck, his right knee on George Floyd's back, face down on the pavement. That Officer King sit on Mr. Floyd's waist area and had Officer Lane hold his feet down. You can even see Mr. Floyd trying to pull his feet up. We all are going to fight to breathe. Everybody knows that fear when you all of a sudden realize you're having trouble breathing. It's just innate, right? We want to survive. We know we have to breathe. And there's an automatic reaction when you begin to feel like that is right. And you can see Mr. Floyd going through that. He tries to pull his feet up. But he's held down by these 3 officers while Officer Powell is looking on. Later, of course, goes to keep people who want to help away. He's placed face down on this pavement so harshly that it rubs the skin off his face. There's injuries to his face from being face down on a pavement. He has injuries to his knuckles from just trying to lift himself up. And he's telling Officer Chauvin, can't breathe, and dying. And Mr. Chauvin's response was, And all this time, imagine what Mr. Floyd is going through. Talk about particular cruelty and torture. Really try to appreciate what he's going through. He knows he's suffocated. We don't know that feeling of not being able to breathe enough. He's begging, he's pleading, he's being ignored. His concerns are being dismissed by somebody who has taken custody but not care. And he's kept in that prone position for 9.5 minutes and was suffocated. There's no other way to say it. That's particularly cruel. That is more cruel than a typical second-degree unintentional murder. Significantly more. This is not a momentary gunshot, punch to the face. This is 9.5 minutes of cruelty to a man who was helpless and just begging for his life. This court found that there were children present, standing only a few feet from these officers. These children, who were ages 17, and one child, age 9. Why is that an aggravating factor? Well, I think everybody can figure that out. Right? It's particularly bad to commit a crime in front of children. We've heard a lot of academia about the development of the young brain and how long it can take. And here you got 4 teenage girls, a 9-year-old girl. How are they going to process this? Standing feet from a man being suffocated by police officers. Such a stark sight that one of the children even says, "We got to call the police on the police." How do you process that as a 9-year-old? The children were not only present watching a man die. We've all seen, if you haven't, you really need to look at George Floyd's face as he's dying, he's suffering. Children have to watch this. But not only that, police officers, and there are people around them wanting to help. And at one point, I'm sure they got upset. At one point, Mr. Chauvin points his mace, grabs his mace, keep him back. How does a child look at that? There's another officer screaming at them to get back. A typical second-degree unintentional murder doesn't involve children standing feet away, watching 9.5 minute suffocation of a man begging for his life. This court also made a finding that the defendant committed the offense with the involvement of 3 or more other persons. Lane and King were involved directly in the restraint, and that Tao kept the bystanders at bay. I've already talked a little bit about Lane and King's role in holding Mr. Floyd down. They recognized that he was pulseless, and Mr. Floyd was pulseless at one point, and it really made no effort to take care of the person in their custody. Officer Tao watched most of the suffocation, and then only went over to keep people from getting help. One person who is identified as a medical trained firefighter for the city of Minneapolis, and that was dismissed. Like, are we going to believe her? So they kept trained medical people from providing help. These were all uniformed peace officers, adding to that abuse of trust and authority. Yeah, I know the defense has asked the court for probation. I'm not going to spend a lot of time arguing that. It's still outside of the realm of, I think, real possibility. This is a murder. I understand some of the arguments made on behalf of Mr. Chauvin. I understand, well, no, I can't understand what his family members and friends are going through. I can't. But it's certainly not enough for departure, probation, for a second-degree murder. We believe, Your Honor, that these 4 aggravating factors, findings that the court has made, certainly justify the upward departure, because there are 4 of them, not standing alone, but in a sense, not overlapping, but coming together to show this is not the typical second-degree murder. This is egregious. This justifies a double upward departure. In the top of the box, which is 180 months, we're asking the court to do a double departure, recognizing all 4 factors for 360 months. As I mentioned before, Your Honor, this is sentencing. This is the time for victims. Okay? This is the time for the loved ones of the victim and the community to have a say. Again, I commend this family. I commend all of the loved ones, the friends, the people that have been involved in this case for tolerating and being gracious. None of this, of course, can bring George Floyd back. That's very true. This is the time for our criminal justice system to say, we hear you. This is the time for their criminal justice system to say, we recognize that this harm you're going through is real. And while we can't feel what you're feeling, we know we can do what your criminal justice system should do and recognize the severity of this crime and reflect that in a sentence to be given. It's time for this criminal justice system to say, we recognize this is more serious than a typical second-degree unintentional murder. For reasons the court found, reflect that and give this court more than an adequate basis to do that. Your Honor, we asked the court to impose a sentence of 360 months, amendment to the Commissioner of Corrections. As you know, Your Honor, there are no fines in murder cases. We would ask the court just to reserve the issue of restitution, clarify that with the family, and present that to the court for 30 days. Thank you, Your Honor.
Anything further from the state?
Oh, Your Honor.
Mr. Nelson. Mr. Blackwell.
Sorry, I just thank you, Your Honor. Your Honor, at this time, the defendant's mother, Carolyn Valenti, would like to address.
Oh, wow.
If you could state your full name, spelling each of your names, and proceed when you're ready.
Carolyn, Carolyn, Valenti, Pawlenty. I am the mother of Derek Chauvin.
Wow.
I am here to speak on behalf of my entire family. On November 25th, 2020, not only did Derek's life change forever, but so did mine and my family's. Derek devoted 19 years of his life to the Minneapolis Police Department. It has been difficult for me to hear and read what the media, public, and prosecution team believe Derek to be an aggressive, heartless, and uncaring person. I can tell you that is far from the truth. My son's identity has also been reduced to that as a racist. I want this court to know that none of these things are true and that my son is a good man. Derek always dedicated his life and time to the police department. Even on his days off, he would call in to see if they needed help. Derek is a quiet, thoughtful, honorable, and selfless man. He has a big heart, and he always has put others before his own. The public will never know the loving and caring man he is that his family does. Even though I have not spoken publicly, I have always supported him 100% and always will. Derek has played over and over in his head the events of that day. I've seen the toll it has taken on him. I believe a lengthy sentence will not serve Derek well. When you sentence my son, you will also be sentencing me. I will not be able to see Derek, talk to him on the phone, or give him a special hug. Plus the fact that when he is released, his father and I most likely will not be here. Derek, my happiest moment is when I gave birth to you. And my second is when I was honored to pin your police badge on you. I remember you whispering to me, "Don't stick me with it." Derek, I want you to know I have always believed in your innocence, and I will never waver from that. I have read numerous letters from people around the world that also believe in your innocence. No matter where you go, where you are, I will always be there to visit you. I promise you I will stay strong, as we talked about, and I want you to do the same for me. I will do what you told me to do, take care of myself, so I will be here for you when you come home. Remember, there is no stronger bond or love than a mother's love. One final thought I want you to remember. Remember, you are my favorite son. Thank you for your time.
Mr. Nelson.
Thank you very much, Your Honor. It is my intent that my remarks this afternoon be quite brief. I do not intend to relitigate the facts of this case, nor spend any substantial time looking at the law. The court is very familiar with the facts of this case, and the parties have fully briefed the court relevant to the sentencing factors. And we recognize that in any case, any sentencing that comes before the court is tasked with a difficult job. The court must craft a sentence that serves the interests of justice.
I was going to say the same thing. Why are her other sons not the favorite? Why does she need to point that out? And what is wrong with you that one of your sons is a favorite? None of your children should be a favorite. And I think that speaks to the character of this family, but I digress. I'll get into that at another
have ever been involved in, that task is exceedingly more difficult. In my remarks today, I just wish to briefly address each of those three considerations, starting with the public impact. As I believe we are all cognizant of, this case is at the epicenter of a cultural and political divide. We tried to keep a lot of that out of the courtroom during the trial and make this case about the facts. But we recognized what has happened as a result of this. There are a great number of people who will view any sentence you pronounce as overly lenient and insufficient to satisfy justice. But there are an equal number of people who will view any sentence you pronounce as draconian or overbearing. Either way, some percentage of the public will view your sentence as a miscarriage of justice. The intensity of the public interest in this case cannot be understated. I trust that the volume of correspondence that each of us has received from the public at large is indicative of these very sentiments on both sides. As I was informed just yesterday, the Attorney General's office established a web submission to accept community impact statement. Again, in my understanding is in a little over 2 weeks, they received over 1,000 submissions. Again, on both sides. By my very best estimate, since my representation of Mr. Chauvin began last summer, I would estimate that I have received over 5,000 emails, over 1,000 voicemails, and hundreds of handwritten letters. Again, from both sides. And I expect that Your Honor has likewise been inundated with public comment and speaking. The impact that this case has had on this community is profound. It goes far beyond what happened on May 25th of last year. It has been at the forefront of our national consciousness, and it has weaved its way into nearly every facet of our lives, from the entertainment that we consume to the presidential politics, from protests to conspiracy theories. In the end, it is my sincere hope that when this proverbial dust settles, the community impact brings forth principled debate and civil public discourse, and ultimately leaves a positive effect on the city of Minneapolis, the state of Minnesota, and the United States. But nevertheless, while this court may consider the community impact, it is for these very same reasons that the court must turn to the foundational legal principles and remember that justice is blind. Law is built on reason and common sense, and it cannot be permitted to be assailed by public opinion.
That is Eric Nelson.
Turning to the second consideration, which is the victim impact, the death of George Floyd. The death of George Floyd was tragic. He is loved by his family members. He is loved by his friends. And his death is justifiably mourned by those whose lives he impacted. He is a son, a brother, a father, an uncle, and a friend of many. And as the court heard today, the impact and the loss of his life, simply just can't be simplified. And it will take time.
While Eric J. Nelson continues to spew his bullshit, I have a couple questions. How do you feel about this sentencing? What do you think will come from it? What do you think his sentence will be? Do you think this will affect our future trials coming up, the high-profile trials, the other officers that are being charged in 3 other officers, along with Dante Wright's trial, Smith, the officer involved in Dante Wright's trial, the officers involved in Winston Smith's trial, if that ever does come to fruition. That's still up for debate, I guess. And then Deanna Marie, who was the latest victim of white supremacist violence, that will be up for trial too, and that will be one to look out for, as well as nationwide murders. Like, how do you feel about all of these trials, and do you think that this trial will set the precedent for them? I'm kind of reluctant, honestly, and I will get to why in another live that I will be doing.
He had never complained. He had done his job. He was decorated as a police officer, multiple life-saving awards. He was decorated for valor. He was proud to be a police officer because what he liked to do was help people. And the statistics show the vast majority of police work is helping people. He was proud to be a Minneapolis police officer.
I agree.
He served this country, the United States, in the United States Army. And he too is a son, a brother, and a father, a friend. He too, his life, the life he's lived, he's not coming into this as a career criminal with 6 points, 5 points, 4 points. He's coming into this never having violated the law because he lived an honorable life and he attempted to live.
I don't think that's
an
true.
honorable life.
Wasn't he involved in other situations with
Chauvin was
other
not even
people
scheduled
as
to
well?
work on May 27th, 2020. He volunteered because there was short staffing. I know from numerous conversations that I've had with him that his
True.
brain is littered with what ifs. What if I just had not agreed to go in that day? What if things had gone differently? What if I never responded to that call? What if, what if, what if? The truth of the matter is, and the end result is that we are here after a jury verdict, finding him guilty of these offenses. And the court's consideration should not only be focused on the aggravating factors, but the mitigating factors as well. The Minnesota Sentencing Guidelines Commission was established for a reason. And yes, the court in circumstances like these has discretion to go beyond and aggravate a sentence beyond the presumptive sentences established by the sentencing guidelines. But the sentencing guidelines don't differentiate between second-degree murders. Someone robs a liquor store, a police officer is involved in an incident, and a person dies in police custody. The law presumes, the legislature presumes that the sentencing guidelines, the guidelines commission was established sufficient penalty for all of the second-degree murder categories or cases you could see. From 2019 back to 2010, a total of 90 people were sentenced for second-degree murder. Those sentences, those people, there were more than that, but people who had a zero criminal history score, more than 90 people were sentenced. 67%, or 60 of those 90 people, received a guideline sentence of 150 months. So 2/3 of all people in this same position received a guideline sentence. 20% received an aggravated sentence, 18 of the 90, and 13% or 12 individuals were granted mitigated departure. So if the legislature and the intent of the sentencing guidelines is to eliminate sentencing disparity, the law should presume that the guideline sentence is what is appropriate in this case. The judge may take You may take into consideration at this point those aggravating factors, but you have to counterbalance them, which is the goal of the law, with the mitigating. I know that this has been an incredibly difficult case for the Floyd family to have to endure. The state of Minnesota, likewise, prosecutors in this case have endured quite a bit, as has Mr. Chauvin's death. This is a case that has changed the world to some degree, and I hope it's positive. But it's my hope that the court follows certain guidelines, applies the law in a reasoned manner, and imposes a just sentence.
Thank you, Mr. Chauvin. Would you join Mr. Nelson at the lectern? Mr. Chauvin, this is your opportunity if you wish to give any input to the court. And so I turn it over to you and your attorney.
Thank you, Your Honor. At this time, due to some additional legal matters at hand, I'm not able to give a full formal statement at this time. But very briefly, though, I want to give my condolences to the Ford family.
This is Derek Chauvin speaking.
There's going to be some other information in the future that would be of interest, and I hope things will give you some peace of mind. Thank you.
And I'll note that I did read your comments in the pre-sentence investigation as well. All right, we are going to take a 15-minute recess so that I can complete the sentencing order based on what I've heard today. And let's reconvene at 2:45. We're in recess.
All right. So what do y'all think about that? So they'll take a recess till 45. So 3:45 Eastern Standard Time, 2:45 Central Standard Time, and then we will hear sentencing. I think I will say what I want to say, and then I'm gonna hop off, and you all will see the sentencing. So I don't need to give my actual reaction to that, but I do want to hear your thoughts and your reactions once you watch the video. Comment below what you think of what you just heard. What do you think of Derek Chauvin's mom speaking? Wow, that was big. For me personally, what the fuck was that? You have a favorite son. You have a favorite child. That's freaking. Um, her son is a good man. Her son is a good cop. I don't know what a good cop is. It's just interesting that they even used her that she was even asked to come up to the stand. It was very strange. Also, exactly what I was going to bring up, James. I did not expect to hear Derek Chauvin speak. I did not expect him to come up and talk. That was the very first time that I actually was able to hear his voice. I'm at a loss for words. This is interesting. This is very interesting. And thank you for that information, James. So if anyone wants to check out this link, it does let you know that he has a history of use of force issues. So I don't know what Nelson was talking about, but he was lying. Yeah, I do think it was definitely a use of white tears, trying to garner whatever sympathy is left for him from whatever white population and to other people in the world that really think that he is innocent, that he did nothing wrong. He's trying to garner their dollars. He's trying to garner more of those. But we ain't buying that, are we? I think that Judge Cahill will give correct sentencing. I really do. I think he's tired of the bullshit too. That's just my thoughts. But we will see. We've got about 10 minutes until the sentencing comes back. So again, I think this is not excuse me, I don't think that this is a lot.
Was one of the lead prosecutors who helped convict Derek Chauvin for the murder of George Floyd.
Always had this kind of overarching concern that we could lose because we're trying to convict a police officer.
Blackwell says that's not the only reason he had doubts. Was it hard for you?
It was hard in a lot of ways. In a lot of ways. I mean, I never had a criminal case in my life. So the idea that I wouldn't just be in a criminal case, but it's a case that's the most watched trial in the history of planet Earth.
3 weeks into the trial, another man is killed by police. What went through your mind when you heard about Dante Wright?
There's still much work yet to do. I understand the Dante Wright case is a completely different case, but there's no question in my mind that once we receive the verdict in the Chauvin trial, it would not be the end of the issues or challenges with either policing or race in America.
So that brings me into my next thing. If I think that how this will affect the other trial. I don't see the same attorneys that were for the George Floyd trial taking part in any of the other trials. I think it's going to be a completely different going forward. It's going to get really tough.
I was involved in the Chauvin trial on a pro bono basis, and I would presume that would be the basis that I might, if involved in Dante Wright, it would be the same. And you kind of reach a point where you pro bono to the point you're out of business. So I've got to stay in business before I can do pro bono for the public good. I need to first do what I need to for my own good first. And I've taken a year off already. I haven't discussed it with him. I haven't been asked by the Attorney General to be involved. So I don't know, but I don't have any plans right now to be involved in the Dante Wright case.
The Derek Chauvin trial is just one case, and there's a bigger issue here. How do we solve it? Where do we go from here?
At the end of the day, the only lasting transformation in this country is only going to occur when people's hearts have changed. That if people can manage to reform themselves, they'll reform thousands. In the meantime, I think this sort of mountain of racial division and prejudice and hatred, if America created it, and America did, America can undo it.
Watch the full interview and get access to more exclusive content by becoming a monthly supporter at georgiaford.com.
All right, so yeah, that's Georgia Floyd. I was thinking Georgia Floyd. Why? That is coverage from Georgia Fort, who again I am very proud of. The work that she has been doing and the coverage that she's been getting and nationwide attention that she's been getting because she deserves it. She's someone who provides the real stories and the real truth and authentically, and I hope that she can continue to do that. I really do.
Since since the interview with Attorney Blackwell, the prosecutor in the trial, ended, we're going to show a clip that Georgia Fort covered showing the delivery of 65,000 signatures in favor of reform as a result of George Floyd's murder. This is the petitions being delivered to the governor's office.
Yeah, people want this to happen.
Oh, absolutely.
It must happen. And all this budget stuff is fine and good. We do need a budget, no question about it. But we need to have the money to $65,000. Put this on top of it.
We're going to bring it up. I'm sure they get it done. I hope that
So yeah, I believe that was like last week or so. Um, Georgia Fort went along with them to take the signatures. Um, so we'll see how Governor Walz responds to that. I'm not sure. I haven't followed if he's given a response and what has come of that, if anything, yet. So I will keep you informed on that. I'm thinking here. On one hand, we've got Juneteenth, right? And on the other hand, we've got this these trials coming up and all of these cases, right? Um, how I feel about Juneteenth being a federal holiday really doesn't sit right with me. I You think about all the people that have low income jobs and make low income wages typically have to work on holidays, right? And then you have some of the white people who generally are off on holidays. It doesn't seem right to me that black people will be working on their holidays, white people will not. It also doesn't sit right with me that it's just a federal holiday in general. It's already been a holiday that we've celebrated. I think that it kind of takes away from the historical context of it, and it's going to be heavily commercialized. And I'm not okay with that. I'm not okay with that. We've already got white people thinking it's a joke or taking advantage of it already. Already. The first year that it's made a federal holiday. Already. And you combine the coverage of these nationwide murders with the narrative of, well, no. Let me take that back. You combine the sentencing, the conviction without a sentencing yet. We're still waiting on the sentencing. You take the conviction of Derek Chauvin and combine it with the federal holiday of Juneteenth. You got white people thinking that racism has been uh, eradicated and black people have won and there's been change, justice has been found. And, yeah, white people are going around thinking this stuff. That's the problem that I have. You know what I mean? At the end of the day, I would have preferred the Juneteenth to stay the way it was, not being a federal holiday, staying in state and local holidays. And I would have preferred, well, I'm not being picky. I'm not going to say it should have been too much here because then it may have never happened at all. I don't know. But with this trial, I'm waiting to see what the verdict is going to be. And then I'll make elaborate on what I'm trying to say here. But also with this trial, what do y'all think the sentence is going to be? I'm really curious to see what the sentence is going to be. Yep, Juneteenth is going to be like a black trial. I'm not for it. We have and we're going to have white people just partying and celebrating with us. And I'm like, no, this is supposed to be about the history here. I'm not buying into it. I'm already aggravated about the whole Juneteenth thing as it is, but
You guys doesn't say from representing down all the other representatives saying that we have special sessions, we have communities.
is being done on our tax dollars. On top of us all working full-time jobs, we're still trying to make sure that we make change. And you guys run on policies that exploit Black people in taxes. Nothing's been done. I wonder how many Black people are in small office making sure that things happen. I wonder how many people of staff outside of Malcolm are actually Black.
Well, I hear right, it's like, what does the case on the false?
I mean, how much,
What?
it takes a lot of empathy, respect, dignity to Black people. That's not
And we're tired of lip service. We want action. We need action. We have the House of Representatives, we have the governorship, and DFL control. There's no reason why we can't use and leverage our capital on them. Why are they controlling two different legs of the government instead of the other way around?
Hey, I know you're I heard you down for what you heard. This issue has been completely ignored. We need to hold it now, begging for the government to do it, and none of that was happening. Dr. Wright was murdered, and there was all this interest in wanting to pass these bills, and now that the international media is gone, it's really thing like that. So how many more people have to be killed for this to happen? The government is and the framing of it has turned into oh, they're picking on the police. Nobody's picking on the police. In fact, nobody allows police to continue to be under.
They're right. Now that the national media has gone away and stopped covering the cases, they've stopped caring to do anything progressively to make changes. In fact, they've doubled down on continuing to oppress folks, continuing to silence them, continuing to destroy property, sacred lands, and really stomp on our rights. And they're really screaming out for help up there, guys, everyone.
That's why we have accreditation agencies now to oversee this stuff and licensing boards that have hopefully more strict standards. The other thing that comes up, and I've heard it time again, is well, I do look.
So we've got about a couple minutes, like 1 or 2 minutes, until we hear back from the sentencing. So I might as well just stay on so we can hear what it's going to be. Right now, we're just listening to coverage from community members and leaders, along with George Floyd's girlfriend, bringing 65,000 signatures to the governor's office to demand, immediate change being done.
We are asking for undoable. Everything that we ask is completely. Will has to be.
I agree. And I don't work on our policies specifically, so I'm familiar with the group and the work to the House needs to give up the governors give all yeah, it's a good question. It's something that's frustrating to us too. Get on an issue like this, it's a forefront of our on address, or it's hard to have change. You know, that really mind this fight. I truly, I know it's frustration to some people who are presently out in a good way, organized in a good way. You guys are out there moving the press, in the governor's office. We hear you. We're going to fight to make some changes here. This session is complicated. There's too much going on, so I get it.
Well, I appreciate the recognition of what we've done and stuff like that, but it should take us, this is 5,000 students, should take us, the corporation. If you actually truly care about Black Lives Matter, like so many Democrats say, like the board said, go to these people's fucking funerals and pretend like he cares, but then he won't actually pass any legislation, but then you'll actually pretend like he cares. We shouldn't take this. That's not what it should take. This is completely unacceptable.
You're 100% right.
These buildings supposed to be made out of paper, not human fucking bodies, man.
And you should get 10 walls open this.
No, understood.
But maybe some days I didn't hear them.
No,
You might hear
no,
but
no,
you got an eye back today, you never know where your place might be. I'm just kidding.
So the key takeaway from this right is action. Yes, we want action, action, action. Period.
The conversation is over.
The conversation
People get angry. When the most patient people are getting angry. So I know that happens. But if I'm getting angry, they just want that. I keep saying that. But now, they keep saying that. The voice of things. Because he's not going to do anything in his power to save somebody else's life, to just leave, just go. One of them, all of them, reciprocal, they don't care about people, and reciprocal, they gotta go. If we gotta trouble the motor, we don't want to wait till time to vote them out anymore. We just want them to leave. That's it. We just want them gone. Get out of the seats, one letter, always up, get out of the seats and just go. Because you don't care about the people.
I do think that's a pretty good motion. And
What do you feel?
oh, as hard as I want to go.
What else is there?
I don't think the governor's in the capital right now. I know you've met with before the capital. But I know that's pretty good.
What team are you on?
So,
What team are you on? Because usually they assign teams.
oh, I'm sorry. I work in the governor's committee. That's why we have. Absolutely. And I don't disagree with this. Yes. For this group, more than anyone, but the whole state. And I hear you on saying to what the governor legislature is now, on process, like we are, which rules we don't require. Right, are the fees are price.
The Department of Human Rights, that's all fine and long-term stuff, but we're trying to prevent the next Winston Smith, the next George Floyd, the next Dante Wright. We're trying to prevent that right now, so we need action. But they can do their investigation, they can get all that stuff done, we can come up with stuff, but we need action now. Block for the path of bills and legislation.
We'll do that. If you can't act, we're going to talk to you. They're going to play on that, we're going to talk to you. This is the thing you won't even look up. The one we have. So don't tell me, but that's the kind of problem you don't want to get off. So they have a lot of I think this is wrong. I don't want to control what else I'm no, y'all did your homework. He was a teacher. He knows he's finding home out his job to do his work. That's right. Yes. We have more than 65,000. Minnesota.
It is 3:51, 2:51 Central Standard Time, and we still have not yet to hear the sentencing.
I'm sorry about that.
Oh, here we go. Oh, perfect timing.
Earlier and listen carefully to all the input here. I just truly appreciate that you took the time to say with this case, and to provide me with input. I have reviewed the pre-sentence investigation and carefully considered all the facts, the case, and the law, but my comments are actually going to be very brief because most of it's going to be in writing. I have a 22-page memorandum that is going to be attached to the sentencing order. And why am I doing it in writing? To emphasize the fact that determining the appropriate sentence in any case, and in this case, is a legal analysis. It's applying the rule of law to the facts of an individual and specific case. And that is why, as opposed to trying to being profound here on the record, I prefer that you read the legal analysis that explains how I determine the sentence. What the case is, or what the sentence is not based on, is emotion or sympathy. But at the same time, I want to acknowledge the deep and tremendous pain that all the families are feeling, especially the Floyd family. You have our sympathies. And I acknowledge and hear the pain that you are feeling. I acknowledge the pain not only of those in this courtroom, but the Floyd family who are outside this courtroom and other members of the community. It has been painful throughout Hennepin County, throughout the state of Minnesota, and even the country. But most importantly, we need to recognize the pain of the Floyd family. I'm not going to attempt to be
Told you, he's with
profound
us.
or clever, but it's not the appropriate time. I'm not basing my sentence also on public opinion. I'm not basing it on any attempt to send any messages. A trial court judge, the job of a trial court judge is to apply the law to specific facts and to deal with individual cases. And so,
Here we go.
Mr. Chauvin, as to count one, based on the verdict of the jury, finding you guilty of unintentional second-degree murder while committing a felony under Minnesota Statute 609.19 subdivision 2, paren 1, it is the judgment of the court that you now stand convicted of that offense. Pursuant to Minnesota Statute section 60904, counts 2 and 3 will remain unadjudicated as they are lesser offenses. Count 1. As sentenced for count 1, the court commits you to the custody of the Commissioner of Correction for a period of 270 months. It's 270. That is a 10-year addition to the presumptive sentence of 150 months. This is based on your abuse of a position of trust and authority, and also the particular cruelty shown to George Floyd. You're granted credit for 199 days already served. Pay the mandatory surcharge of $78 to be paid from prison wages. You're prohibited from possessing firearms, ammunition, or explosives for the remainder of your life. Provide a DNA sample as required by law. Register as a predatory offender as required by law. And you receive a copy of the order and also the attached memorandum explaining the court's analysis. Anything further from the state?
If this needs to be so, we just ask that it be executed forthwith.
Defendant is remanded to the custody of the sheriff to be transported back to the DOC or whichever custody is currently holding. Anything for the defense? All right. Thank you. We are adjourned.
Wow.
Derek Chauvin sentenced to 22 years in prison in the killing of George Floyd. That is above what would be a typical sentence for this crime, but the judge agreed with prosecutors that there were aggravating factors that added to the time. He said that Derek Chauvin gets credit for the 199 days already served, but he now faces this lengthy prison sentence of 22 years, not the 30 years that prosecutors had requested, but still longer than what would be typical. Mary Beth Albright, let's go to you for some legal context on this sentence.
Wow.
And now we're going to it.
That's insane. This is did they say anything about parole? I didn't hear anything about parole. I did hear that he cannot carry firearms or weapons for the rest of his life. Um, that's huge. That's fucking huge. So that means what, he can't be a police officer, right? And he got sentenced to 22 years. I didn't hear anything about parole. I have to double check that. So there you have it. Let me know what y'all think in the comments below. Let me know what you think this is going to do or prove, what message you think they're trying to send with this. And do you think that the sentencing was fair? No firearms, weapons, life. He already did get to serve like 100 some days, but overall he got sentenced to